In this video, I'm going to break down how to become good at both fight stances, out of Orthodox and out of Southpaw. You need to be good at switching from one stance to another and being very comfortable in your opposite stance. As a fighter, you usually fight most of the time, if not all the time, out of your dominant fight stance. And then you also need to be able to switch to your opposite fight stance and be at least comfortable throwing punches and moving around from that opposite fight stance. A lot of fighters are not good at their opposite fight stance, and when they begin to switch to their opposite, they usually get tagged, they get countered, and you can kind of pick them apart a lot easier. They don't have the defense and they don't have the offense down to a level where they can actually execute and fight. And for you, you need to be at least comfortable out of your opposite fight stance. Now, it's very rare that a fighter is 50-50. It's more of a natural gift, a natural talent that fighter has when they can equally fight and switch from one to the other, and they can fight out of both fight stances equally. They can be good at Orthodox and they can be good at Southpaw. Those are rare, and that's more of an exception. And primarily, you're going to be fighting out of your dominant fight stance pretty much all the time, but you need to be switching to the other stance in order to kind of set some shots up. And there's going to be a few things you need to be good at your opposite fight stance, especially if your opposite fight stance is a Southpaw. So let's break it down. First things first, the basics. Two fight stances, Orthodox and Southpaw. The difference between the two is Orthodox is your left hand forward, your right hand back. Southpaw is the opposite, is your right hand forward, your left hand back. The way you decide which fight stance you should be fighting up as your dominant fight stance is if you are right-handed, then your fight stance is Orthodox. Right hand back, your power shot, your left hand forward, your setup shot, your jab. And if you are left hand dominant, then you go to Southpaw. Right hand forward, that's your jab. Left hand is your power shot. That's how you decide which fight stance you should be fighting out of. I am right hand dominant, so my dominant fight stance is Orthodox. And there are exceptions, of course, where some fighters, they're left-handed and they put their left hand forward, and opposite, if they're right-handed, they put their right hand forward. Now, those again are exceptions. Usually, when you start things off, when you're beginning, that's how you should assume a fight stance. If you're right-handed, right hand back, left hand forward. If you're left-handed, left hand back, right hand forward. Southpaw versus Orthodox. Next comes what should you be drilling and spending most of your time on. As a rule, you should be drilling 70 to 80% of the time out of your dominant fight stance. So for me, my dominant fight stance is Orthodox, so I drill most of my combinations, most of my movement and everything else out of that dominant fight stance. You want to be the best at your dominant fight stance. And then the other 20-30%, you switch over to the other side, to your opposite fight stance, and you drill to become proficient and to become comfortable, so you can periodically switch to your opposite fight stance and be able to throw when you need to switch to that fight stance, and be able to deliver, be able to defend and attack. And there are going to be times when you completely dedicate for a certain amount of time to your opposite fight stance. So let's say you want to nail something down, maybe you have an opponent and you think their weak points will be exposed if you fight out of your opposite fight stance against them. So then you dedicate a set amount of time to kind of, polish and, elevate your opposite fight stance to another level. But usually you stick with training and becoming the best at your dominant fight stance, and then periodically you switch over to kind of sharpen and to become comfortable in your opposite fight stance. Now, when it comes to drilling specific technique, specific punches, combinations, kicks, what should you be drilling in one fight stance versus the other? And what do you pick and choose? Because you can't drill the same amount of kicks, same amount of combinations, same amount of movement, everything from one stance, and then transition it to another. So out of your dominant fight stance, you need to be drilling pretty much all the fundamentals, all of the essential punches, and all of the essential high percentage combinations. This is where you're going to be throwing most of your strikes, so you need to be as versatile as possible in your attack and in your defense, and you need to be the best out of your dominant fight stance. Nobody should be able to match their dominant fight stance against you. That's the mentality you need to have. So you drill all of the high percentage strikes and all of the high percentage combinations that you need for your dominant fight stance. Now, when it comes to the opposite fight stance, you need to narrow things down. You can't be drilling the same amount. You need to pick and choose your strikes and your combinations, and those need to be the highest percentage and the most amount of damage. So in my case, it will be Orthodox, this is where I drill most of my strikes. And then when I switch over to Southpaw, there are certain strikes, certain combinations that I throw out of Southpaw. And because I'm Orthodox and my Southpaw is the opposite stance, that's what I'm going to primarily focus on, but the principles will apply if you reverse it. So in my Southpaw, what I drill is my fundamentals. I throw my jabs, my crosses, my left hooks, and my rear uppercuts. You need to be drilling your fundamentals out of both. Obviously, out of your dominant fight stance, you need to be a master at them, and out of your Southpaw, you need to be comfortable with them. Your jab, your cross, your lead hook, and your rear uppercut. You need to flow, you need to be sharp, you need to be fast, and you need to be powerful with them. And to combine with punches, you need to be very fluid and comfortable with your footwork out of your Southpaw or out of your opposite fight stance. So you need to be very good out of your dominant, and then when you switch over, you need to be very good moving around out of your Southpaw, out of your opposite fight stance. So you have your fundamentals and also footwork. Forward, back, your lateral movement, your pivots, and you need to be very good combining strikes, your fundamental 4 punches, with footwork out of your opposite fight stance. Now, because it's your opposite fight stance, you may not be as sharp, as fast, as powerful, and as fluid as much as you are out of your dominant, but that's okay. That's why you're drilling. And again, you want to be comfortable and you want to be proficient out of your opposite fight stance, but again, it may not match your dominant fight stance because that's your natural fight stance, and you drill most of your time out of that fight stance, so you're naturally not going to match both. But at least when the time comes and you need it, you have those fundamentals that you can always fall back onto out of your opposite fight stance. Now, there might be some additional punches for you that you might be wanting to incorporate into your opposite fight stance. So that, that may be a lead uppercut, that may be an overhand left, a hook. Actually, that's one of the punches that I'm going to talk about next, a left hook to the body. So you begin to incorporate them into your drilling. But you find that out, which punches and which combinations that you want to kind of begin to implement when you start drilling, when you start working on the bag, when you start going shadow boxing out of your opposite fight stance, and when you are sparring against other people in your opposite fight stance, you find out what you begin to land with and where you kind of where your strengths are when you are in the opposite fight stance. And when it comes to combinations, you have few combinations you need to maximize and be comfortable with in your opposite fight stance, and that is progressive and consistent jab, double jabs, stepping jabs, any type of jab. You need to be the best you can be in your opposite fight stance. I mean, your jab is bread and butter in both fight stances, and that includes your Southpaw or the opposite fight stance. Then you have your jab cross. Also, you need to be proficient and comfortable throwing your jab cross out of that opposite fight stance. Again, you may not be very crisp or sharp or fast as you are in your dominant stance, but you just drill enough to where you can land and be protected when you come back. And again, just being comfortable and being able to throw out of your opposite fight stance with speed, with power, with precision, and just being protected, keeping all the body mechanics in play as much as you do out of your dominant. And then you have your other 2 punch combos, which are very useful, and they tend to naturally flow, which is your lead hook to rear uppercut to lead hook. Those are very good because your right hand, since if this is your dominant hand, when you position it forward, those hooks also come naturally to you. So throwing that hook out of your lead with your right hand, your dominant hand in Southpaw, also very good punch. And then when you begin to incorporate some uppercuts, you can put some damaging combos together in close in that Southpaw, in that opposite stance. And then just experiment and drill and see what are the 2-punch, 3-punch combos that you kind of naturally gravitate towards, and then you are more fluent with them than others. And that will tell you what you should be adding and what you should be drilling most of the time when you switch over to your opposite stance. And the last part I want to talk about is maximizing the damage of your punches and your kicks out of your opposite fight stance. So if you're going to spend a very short amount of time and you're going to drill certain punches, you don't want to just drill all of them, of course, like I mentioned, and you want to just maximize just a few, and then you want to take those few, including just individual punches and combinations, and you want to target specific part of the body, and you want to maximize the damage that you throw, because you're going to be fighting mostly out of your dominant fight stance. But when you switch to the opposite, in this case I'm going to primarily focus on going from Orthodox as your dominant to your Southpaw, your opposite stance. So when you switch to your Southpaw, I'm not going to be thrown as fluid and as crisp with power and the same movement as I do out of my dominant. So what do? I need to target specific parts of the body in my southpaw. And out of southpaw, you have one body part that you can specifically target, that you can bring down a bigger opponent, a better fighter with a single body shot, and that is targeting the liver. The liver is found on your right hand side of the body, and then when you throw out a dominant fight stance, it's going to be your left hand, and of course when you switch over to your southpaw, you're going to be targeting with your left hand as well. However, because in your orthodox this is your lead, you're not going to be able to generate as much power. When you switch to southpaw, your left hand becomes your power shot. You have your power hooks and you have your power kicks. In orthodox, you just don't have the same amount of power and the same amount of snap and the setup as you do out of your southpaw. So when you switch to southpaw, you really have that power of your left hand side of punches, kicks, and knees that you can target that liver, because it's going to be right here on the right hand side. So when you switch, it's right here. You have your hooks, you have your knees, and you have your roundhouse kicks to the body, and that's where you need to be drilling the most. Punches, knees, kicks, and combinations that target that liver. So now you have a purpose of switching to your southpaw, in addition to, you know, kind of confuse them, going from one to the other, and just kind of, you know, mixing things up. It can open you up to a lot more shots. But when you switch to the southpaw, and that's what I do, when I switch to my southpaw, I primarily begin to look more and more to hunt and hit that liver. I want to target, I want to punish, I want to take you down with the liver shot. So I will also target it with my left hand when it's in orthodox. But when I switch over to the other side, I'm specifically aiming to bring you down with my power shots. Hooks to the body, knees to the body, and then roundhouse kicks to the body, all targeting this spot right here. This is the spot you want to hit. So that is your final piece of the puzzle of what you should be drilling out of your opposite fight stance, out of your southpaw, and that is, you need to be targeting that liver from the southpaw, and you need to become as good as you can be out of that fight stance, targeting that body shots, targeting that liver as much as possible with fluidity, with sharpness, with crispness, and as much speed and power, and as much of a setup, and as much as timing you can gather out of drilling out of that opposite fight stance. Now, if you want to go deeper in how to target the liver out of both fight stances, out of your orthodox as well as your southpaw, and how to land specific punches, kicks, and knees, and specific combinations, as well as how to set them up, I have a program that breaks everything down for you. How to do this in orthodox, and then how to do this in southpaw, and how to maximize the effectiveness out of both fight stances so you can begin to target the liver and bring bigger, better people down with a single shot to the body.